Yes.
How difficult is it to be a programmer? Just like
it's the worst thing you'll ever do in your life.
So hard I can't do it.
Yeah, as someone who's tried like 2 or 3 times, it's not impossible, but it's hard. I mean, like, I have a lot of discipline, but I get like halfway through and I'm like, man, I got halfway through. I don't even know what that means. I get like halfway through feeling like I'm competent to make something, and I'm like, I just, it's tough.
Yeah, as a programmer, game development offers different challenges because we're constantly given underpowered hardware, and I mean, a PlayStation 4 doesn't run as fast as like a top-of-the-line computer, so you have to write code very differently. So the challenges come from making a big giant 3D game like Infinity Blade work on an iPhone and run 60 frames a second. So it presents different challenges than like database programming. Definitely.
Right, and that's even like way more advanced than I've even got. Like, I'm just trying to make something, even if it runs awful, and like that's tricky. Like, it takes a lot of work, but I think that's why they're so high in demand, because you need a lot of them, and it's tough. But I think that makes it worth it. I mean, you like it, huh? It's good.
Yeah, but I'm pretty masochistic, so.
But programmers make those, right?
Yeah.
No comments.
Yeah, because they're rare.
And in demand.
Yes.
And handsome.
And handsome.
And modest.
Very, very handsome.
Slightly demented.
Yes.
Oh, okay. My specialty, or my passion really, is marketing and advertising. How in the world would I get into the business of marketing and advertising video?
Move to San Francisco.
Get an
Go to
MBA.
San Francisco?
There's a lot of companies that try to advertise for games, specifically in the mobile market. Give you an example, in 2013, the mobile industry was about $14 billion. $1 billion of that was from advertising revenue. So there is a big market and it's going to grow. It's there. Look for marketing firms that are advertising for game studios or that advertise, like have a platform for it. It's like Game Loft, App Scaler, or App Seller, or something of that nature. They are out there, and you can find them.
Or just the big publishers. You can get in as a junior marketing dude at there and work your way up and learn the whole system. MBA is definitely preferred.
I was gonna say, alternatively, if you don't want to move and you have a lot of hustle, you could network with a bunch of indie devs and work out a revenue share. Say, hey, I'll market your game, I'll do all this, give me 5% on the back end, and then you could develop a little business and do it independently.
Have you ever worked on developing an engine or a game engine, and would that require that a larger knowledge base, like a master's level knowledge to write it?
I worked on the Torque engines for a couple of years. Yeah, it's a big thing. I mean, not to say Torque's a big thing. Working on an engine, it's just a big scale. There's a lot to work with there. I wouldn't say to write one from scratch you would need like master's knowledge, or you would need some serious game knowledge for that. But I came in and when I started working with Torque, I hadn't even graduated college yet, and I was still in my dumb phase. But I was able to hop in and learn the engine and kind of learn the ins and outs of it. And through that, I learned how to write other engines and do other things. So writing an engine from scratch is something that you'll rarely have to do. That's more of a lead programmer job. And you won't be at a breaking in the industry talk if you're a lead programmer. So.
I guess it depends on what generation you consider retro at this point.
Because I can go retro.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite game ever, which might at this point be retro, was Secret of Mana on SNES. So that's my favorite.
Adventure on 2600. Damn bats.
I mean, I want to say Mega Man, but the dude's here, like in the other room. So.
Master of Magic. I played that on
No tablet.
Yeah, it was back in the day when we didn't even have Windows.
You guys are old.
DOS-based game.
Yeah, it was a DOS-based game.
Put your floppy disk in, type /RUN.
Ooh, Wasteland.
Wasteland. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna say Quake. Yeah, Quake's my favorite. I'll count that as retro.
You're arcade.
All right, we got it. Down in the back? No, behind you. We'll go to you next.
Thank you. I was hoping you could share with us that anecdotally that aha moment where it all made sense, came together.
Where I wasn't dumb anymore?
Well, no, that you knew you were on the right path anyhow.
I still don't know.
Yeah.
Actually, I can mark that one. That was when the studio in Michigan that I worked at, they hired me after months and months of stalking them to come in and write dialogue for Tonka Joe. And while I was there, the founder of the company, who's like chief creative officer at that point, came up to me and said, "Hey, we got another project that Hasbro is putting a request out for. Do you want to do the proposal?" And I was like, "Okay." And so can I, look at a former successful one too? So he gave me one of the other proposals that worked, and I just mimicked it. Had to come up with the ideas for what the new activities were going to be in this Tonka workshop game, and then they sent it in, and it got accepted. And then he came back, he's like, "Well, your proposal," throws it on the desk, like, "Now make it. You're the designer." And I was like, "Oh shit, okay."
Oh, okay. Yeah, my big moment actually was not too long ago, about 6 months ago. We in the office had the contract to do the Towerfall game on PS4, but we couldn't figure out which of the programmers was going to do it, and all of us kind of equally wanted to, so we ended up just playing a game of Towerfall to see who did it. And I've always been like really not very confident in my programming abilities, and I work with very, very talented people, so it's really kind of intimidating. So I was going to let them do it, but I kind of got in the zone and just killed everybody. And so, I'm doing my victory dance, like taunting them, and they go, "Okay, well, you're lead on the project now." And I was like, "Oh, shit, I didn't." I forgot that's what we were playing for.
He did a good job, though. If you play Towerfall on PS4, it's good, so he sells himself short. For me, it was my first year at GDC. I think I was still doing part-time audio for games because I was still in-house at Funimation at the time. And I went to GDC, and just being around all my peers and people doing exactly what I do and on the absolute highest level possible. Because the audio community is fairly small, so you get to meet everyone from the smallest to the Grammy nominated. So I mean, it's pretty cool. So for me, it's just being around my peers. So that was it.
I hate to keep repeating the same thing over again and over again, but you have to show something complete. That's the biggest thing, and it's the thing that people constantly lack. They will show a game that's half done, or it crashes at the end, or they'll have a bunch of excuses for it, and that looks awful. It makes it look like you can't complete something. That's not something that anybody wants to hire somebody for. So your portfolio should have, like I was saying earlier, maybe a couple YouTube clips. Like if you want to show something specific that maybe you don't have completely done, that's when you go to a YouTube video. But you do need to have at least a couple applications or a couple games that they can download and check out. They need to be complete. They need to have UI, they need to have sound, they need to have, even if it's a very small scope game, like you create a Snake game and you replace all the textures. If somebody showed me a Snake game that was complete, had UI, and it was sat audio, and it had decent art, had sprite animation, stuff like that, that would look much more impressive than if somebody showed me a physics engine that was halfway done. It's all about completing, so focus on having complete things on your resume. And if you want to showcase something like a physics engine and it's not complete, make what you're showing them complete, you know what I'm saying? So if you want to show them your
bullet engine?
Your bleep bloops and your click clack, your bullet engine or whatever, just make sure that you're showing a full complete thing, and that'll impress them.
So earlier you guys mentioned, as far as networking and our foot in the door, can you guys list off any specific things that anybody living anywhere could get in touch with to network? Because I'm familiar with, I've been on gamedev.net, that's something I've done, but what are other avenues that?
The International Game Developers Association is a great place to network. The main thing, there are lots of things, there's lots of meetups, there's lots of associations, And the main trick with networking, go to those events, don't go to those, and meet people, don't go to those events asking for jobs, because you'll get blacklisted. Yeah, real fast. So go there, meet people, share your passion.
The rest will work itself out.
Yeah, pretty much.
One other, because I was going to do this anyway. Game Dallas is an event we hold here. It's September 5th and 6th up in Addison. We don't have a good description for it yet, but this is the second year of it, but it's a game design conference. Both tabletop and digital game designers come and speak at it. We have, people showing off prototype games, both tabletop and digital. But
it's a motion capture studio coming off to show off their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots going on at it, but the point is it's a gathering point, an annual gathering right here in Dallas for that kind of stuff. So you just show up and just start talking to people, and we have games being played constantly, so it's very social. You can, no pressure. It's not like a cocktail party where you have to come walk up to a stranger and come up with a way to break the ice. It's like you're sitting there playing whatever, and you just start. Yeah, and you just start talking about the game you're playing, or this reminds me of X, Y, Z. Oh, really? Why do you think that? And then you just kind of now you're chit chatting with people. You don't realize it's the beeping gearbox or whatever, but that stuff happens.
What are the costs associated with like getting into these groups?
None.
Well, Game Dallas has.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well,
if you want to attend the conference, there's a fee. For the meetups and for our events, they're usually free.
Yeah.
I mean, except for our Christmas party, but that's because we provide alcohol.
Lots.
For me, I found game jams are really good, and you can just Google game jams in like whatever area you're in. Those have been good networking places for me. And then Dallas Society of Play has an arcade cabinet downstairs, so I think they have some people standing by it, I imagine. And they seem to be really consistently active. There's a lot of groups that start up here in Dallas, but then kind of fall by the wayside. We had a Unity group for a while that was meeting every month, and I haven't heard from them in like 6 months. So, but yeah, DSOP seems to be meeting a lot. So I would say that and game jams is what I would recommend.
Yeah, if you live in Dallas, you're blessed to live in one of the largest cities for game development. I think we're like top 3 or something like that. I mean, we're one of the 3rd largest game development cities around.
We are the top. We're in the top 3. Texas is the 2nd largest game development state. The government is very pro game, so you're in a great location if you're in the DFW area.
Yeah, so with that comes a bunch of people that want to meet up and hang out and talk about games and make games together. So you're in the right place, one of the right places. Assuming you're in Dallas.
We'll jump in first.
So I've actually been making games for maybe 10 years, in a couple of months. Hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. That was. But because of the nature of the games I make, it's for direct customers for pilot trainers. I can't actually show that, like demos and stuff, that on a portfolio. So how do I translate that experience to getting a job elsewhere? So not to just say I've had 10 years of experience with this company, work with these particular aircraft and so forth, or do I need to, on the side, I've worked overtime already, so I don't have the time to go out and make another game of my own. How do I make a portfolio with that in mind?
Make the civilian version on the side that you can show publicly.
I can't.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you just got to
Resources and other limitations.
use your experience to make something else.
Yeah, if you're under a contract that says you can't show or any of that, you're going to have to do stuff on the side. There's no other way. Because it's just going to show up on the resume.
Unfortunately, I mean, you can say, I've got this great stuff, I can't show you. It might fly, it might not.
10 years of development of a company that makes work of a certain nature.
But we can't.
But they don't know what you did.
That's one of those, it may work for you, and it may not. You're in a bad situation, unfortunately.
It gets you in for the code test, and then you can take a couple of code tests, and like, oh, well, yeah.
If I was in your position, actually, that's when you start networking. That's when you start getting out there and you try to meet people, because that way, then you can have someone that can speak for you and say, hey, we need a new programmer, we need a new developer, we need a new artist. And I know this guy, he doesn't have a lot of portfolio, but he's really cool, he's been working 10 years, he definitely has experience, bring him in. And then you got your foot in the door, you got the interview, and then the rest takes care of itself.
Yes, also would help to point to some non-game open source projects that I've ended up, whoever I needed at home.
Absolutely. It's a lot smaller.
Yeah, it's a lot smaller.
It's
They're-
almost non-existent. Yeah, after Time Game, they kind of were done, so there's not a lot out in Houston anymore, unfortunately.
Like, we got people from Houston coming up here to our events.
Yeah, they come to our events. So.
There is some. What's the guy's name? Robert Breckenridge is
Yeah.
running. I don't know if it's an IGDA or what it is. But he's running a group down in Houston.
The Unity chapter.
Yeah. Talk to me afterward because I know a guy in Houston. I just gotta look his number up.
So it's there. It's small.
He's the guy to talk to in Houston if you want to get into the game dev networking.
Go ahead. You.
Dude, it's you every time you point it in that direction.
Anyway, what specific knowledge would be good for sound design or music in games? Like, would it be college level knowledge, or is it just something
Sure. Mostly schools that teach music and audio. I mean, first of all, it's going to be hard to find any school that teaches sound design. It's pretty limited. Like, that's not a super common discipline. But as far as just audio in general schools, they teach you how to be a music teacher, basically. They teach you history and classical training, which is useful to some degree. But honestly, 80% of what I use every day and how I got into where I got was self-discipline and learning on the side and networking. You really, as an audio artist, you really don't need college unless it's to help teach you. And it did teach me the theory and stuff, which I probably wouldn't have learned on my own, and I'm grateful for it. So it's really just how much you need to be taught, and you can evaluate that by comparing your work to the work of others. And when you pick up a theory book, if you're able to get through it, or if you're like, I'm so bored, then you might need to go to class. But as far as sound design goes, I know when I was looking at colleges, I didn't see a single one. I think Full Sail in Florida might have something like that. But most of the time it's either music or engineering. And so they teach you the tech or they teach you the art. Those are the two common options.
Yeah, it's actually a weird thing. It goes across most of the disciplines. But I have found that the easiest way to describe what we do is a craft. And because it falls right in between them. Jim was just saying, it's not engineering, and it's not, way out there art. Most of us are craftspeople that we know the fundamentals of how to do something very well, and then we'll do something really crazy with it. So whether you're a solid programmer and you come up with these weird tricks to make it happen in a limited space, or you're this designer or artist, or you come up with these new techniques. That's pretty much what wows somebody about a new game every time. Is something new was done differently, and 80% of it is the same as that game you bought 2 years ago, but it has this one little pitch to it, and that's because the craftspeople got their mitts on it.
What?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So to start off, I'm going to be relocating here to Dallas pretty soon, and I was wondering what is.
He's looking for a roommate.
I was wondering. I'm leading a app development team back in Charlotte, North Carolina, for coming out here. What are some of the suggestions for back in Charlotte, North Carolina, before I leave, and then the first things I should do once I'm here in Dallas?
Don't burn any bridges.
Yeah.
We'll hear about it before you get here.
I guess when you get here, start attending some of the networking events we mentioned. If you forget all of them, just try to find the IGDA, because that's us, and then we can, through us, you'll hear about a lot of the events. Because if you don't know anyone, you're really just, you're making a game by yourself, and you have to hope that it is like the magic, golden ticket.
Yeah, networking is super important. I went to college with a friend of mine, and he was also doing game dev, and we even did our first game together and everything like that. He's miles ahead of me as a programmer. He is one of the most brilliant programmers I've ever worked with. I broke into the industry like 3 or 4 years before he did, and it was purely because I went out and networked. And after I went and got my job, I talked to him and got him one too. So it's all about networking, seriously.
Yep. And if you're moving to the DFW area, go to the north side of it. That's where most of the game development is. It's between 75, 35, up to 380. Somewhere
Move to
there.
Denton. Don't really move to Denton. So I live in Denton, which is way north of that. So yeah, the Plano.
It's the golden.
Yeah, I'm not like the tip of the golden triangle. Like no one. We're trying to get someone going in Denton, but yeah, if you'd like to come and start it.
There's several small studios in Denton. They're all up in they're scattered throughout, but in the North America.
Yeah, and a little easier would be our chapter's a Facebook page, GameDallas.org will help you out. Meetup.com, we have an IGDA Dallas meetup page. So you get plugged in any of those, you start getting all the emails, hear about all the events.
Come to the Christmas party. That's where most of the people come.
Yeah, game dev drink.
They have the game dev drink.
What is the, aside from the frequent meetings, are there any industry-related advantages to living in that area? Like, are there like certain things that everyone gets access to because they live close together, or?
Access to each other.
Yeah, that's the most important resources.
In fact, one of our board members just started up a coffee meeting. So like a morning coffee from like 8 to 10, right in the middle of Plano somewhere. So, you know,
The closer you
local
are
to,
to
you can show up at these things.
Did you have?
I was just wondering, I mean, are there any requirements as to the positions of people to be like attending various events, or like out between outsiders, or any like?
We really don't care. If you are interested
Just
or
don't be
you're
a
a
douche.
developer, come on.
We just follow, yeah.
I said just don't be a douche.
Yeah, pretty much.
I was gonna say, we follow the Will Wheaton philosophy, don't be a dick.
Last year there was a Laura Croft franchise game that was released. It's really excellent. About 8 or 10 years before that, there was a Laura Croft franchise game that was really buggy, hard to play, not very good at all. Whenever y'all are writing games, what is the process of actually game testing? And like in that case right there, in your opinion, do you think the studio just released it too quick before it's checked out? It was buggy to the point you'd be running across a flat floor and just die. It was terrible. Very hard to play.
QA is the redheaded stepchild.
Yeah,
It
I mean,
really is.
they give us it's not like when we release these games and they have bugs. Most of the time we know that these bugs are, we know that we released the game and the bug is out there because we do internal testing and there's a giant list of the bugs that are currently in the game, and whatever we have time to address, you address the ones at the top and the ones that you can fix the quickest. And a lot of the time, you just don't have enough time to fix everything. A game is never tech done; it just gets released. So.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what conditions you're working under. Kind of goes back to that big, are you under a big corporate thing or an indie developer? Because if you're in the machine with a publisher and all that kind of stuff, that ship date was set 2 years ago and it's not going to move because the magazine covers and articles went out, the websites, the advertising was bought. I mean, if you're big enough, we're talking TV and radio spots, that kind of stuff, billboards. So they don't care there's $250 still that didn't get squashed yet. Don't go home until they're fixed, but this thing is shipping on Friday. And it's got to go, it has to go, if it's on disc, it has to go get reproduced and boxed and shipped and get all to the Best Buys the night before and all that kind of stuff. And they're not going to, pull the brakes on that thing. It costs them too much money. They'd rather ship the buggy thing and patch it. You can always patch it.
A lot of poorly implemented games come down to poorly managed time, like a poorly managed project. That's why project management is such a huge thing in game dev over the last 5 or 10 years.
I mean, the other thing is if it's a smaller studio and they're living off the checks, their advanced checks, and they're out of milestones, it has to ship, but we don't get any more money. They just ship it. They get the retail money back, so they keep paying their people to do the patch, to fix it. So sometimes, I don't ever pre-release purchase or buy early or line up at midnight or anything because you don't know what's coming out of that box. And I don't want to pay $60 for the right to beta test your game. Beta testers.
I hate to say that the game didn't sell because nobody wanted what you said. But it just sent the wrong message.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I work in a very different industry, but it's very, very similar, right into an industry. You have the network, you have to think it works for the world. One thing you haven't mentioned
that's actually how I got started, was through an internship. I started as an intern maybe like 5 or 6 years ago at the studio I'm at now, and they brought me on full time. It is a pretty rare case, but it exists out there, and most of the time they're not advertised. I mean, the internship that I got wasn't advertised. I just emailed them one day and said, hey, I really like your guys' work. What can I do for you guys? And we ended up working something out. So for the people that are looking for internships, I'm not saying go spam Gearbox, but you definitely have to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
They are not going to come to you for an internship. They're not going to. I think Gearbox is like the only studio I can think of in the area that advertises their internships and stuff like that. Everywhere else, you just gotta network, find the right kind of person. But yeah, it exists. It's just rare.
The thing is with the internship, there's kind of a different spin on that, because you've got studios that'll hire or do a contract for 2 months of testing their game. They'll just bring in a whole bunch of people. That's kind of an internship too, because if you can get in, you can show what you're doing. They might bring you on as a tester full time, or some other role if they like you and you're doing your job good.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the other way, we've been talking about the whole time, is how everyone on the dev team is like this SWAT, U.S. Marine kind of person, perfect at their job, above and beyond. And we're running razor tight deadlines. No one has time to babysit the intern. So either places have enough headroom, or they're picky enough about their interns that they're basically just grabbing people that already have the skills, and it's just a free pass to come visit for a while. But that's probably the overall and general problem with internships in the industry is no one has time to sit there and coach the intern.
You partner with any of the schools? I know you teach at the school. Do you partner with the school on any of your projects?
I know the Guildhall does something. I'm not sure of the details of it, but they have a program that they take some of their students and they get to work at a studio for I don't know how long. I don't know the details, but I do know they have something like that.
I didn't say that, Sherman.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are, again, it's rare, but if it's going to happen, it will happen in a place like Dallas or LA or something that has a vast number of schools, a vast number of companies, and there's connections between them. Guildhall is basically built up, asking the industry how did this work, so the ties have always been there.
So for the IGDC or
IGDA.
you have sections that are, say, for instance, design schools or one of music schools. You have sections that are part of that with educational or the academics? No?
Not really. Some parts of the country where they don't have enough professional development going on, but they have a big university, they'll start student chapters just so the students can network with the rest of the organization. But that would be kind of repetitive, say, here in Dallas, because we actually have a very active chapter. But we encourage college students to come to our meetings and stuff. So.
Yes.
As someone who's worked QA, and you talked about the industry, is there a better community for QA in Dallas than, say, I worked out in San Diego, and basically all QA was treated like crap? And is it more interaction between just getting 100 works as attended lists back every day?
From what I hear, it's kind of just awful everywhere. I mean, it's the lowest paying job in the building, and it's the most disposable job. So yeah. So it's just sort of the unfortunate reality, I think, everywhere. From what I understand, I've never worked a QA position myself, so
yeah. I mean, the urban legend way back was that it was the easy way into a studio, and you get recognized, and you can show your worth and make suggestions. And exactly. So if that ever existed, that age has come and gone. But yeah, it's like minimum wage, 4 hours or whatever at a stretch, and after school, overnight. Here's a pizza. Consider yourself lucky.
Yeah, I mean, an entire department getting fired isn't a new thing in game dev stuff. That's
especially going live. It's like studios don't maintain huge employee lists anymore. It's you keep the core team. As much as we all loathe to compare ourselves to the film industry a lot, labor-wise, that's kind of where we're heading. As far as when a movie gets made, no one Lynx and I, when the director and the producer and all these executives pull together a crew, make a movie. Oh, we're done. That's a wrap. See ya. There's no expectation you're going to be, paid by the director next week. The movie's done. Go home. That's the way the game stuff is going. You have a core team, but you hire and lay off on, based on demands.
We got time for one more question.
For someone who's trying to learn, basically, for any kind of discipline, maybe design free programs available, like Blender, for programming code blocks, and then game engines like Unity and things like that. Do you see those a lot in being used a lot in companies, or would it be worth learning how to use them, or would it better to learn how to use the Unreal Engine or Maya and things like that?
One of the best ways to make yourself valuable is to have a huge tool set, is to be experienced in a lot of different frameworks, a lot of different technologies, a lot of different programs, etc. Indie studios will use smaller, cheaper things, like Game Maker. In my studio, I've used Audacity countless times. And Jim hates me for it. but as you get to bigger studios, that's when you're gonna see stuff like UDK and not Unreal, UDK and Unity be more common. But it's not a waste of time to learn these at all, because even if it's going to be something you use anyway, because even if you're at a big studio, I'm still going to use Audacity wherever I go. So, and you will too, for whatever program you want to use. When it becomes part of your workflow, if that becomes part of how you work, so just learn it.
And most of the things you named have trial free versions of, so there's really no reason not to get access to them. You used to be paying the butt to get Maya or Max on your own, but it's not. Unity and UDK, tons of tutorials, tons of access, free download.
It's worth mentioning that a lot of these engines very recently have switched to a subscription model. So instead of paying, $3 or $4 grand for a Unreal license, you pay $20 a month. Same thing they do with Photoshop. I'm pretty sure 3ds Max does it. So it's a lot. The barrier to entry is a lot lower.
Now, I'm sure there's still some questions, and we're out of time for this space, but we'll be outside and might migrate to a bar. If you've got questions, if you want to network or whatever, we'll still be available.
I want to go to the bar. Can we just say we're going to the bar?
Sure, we're going to the bar.
We're going to the bar. So if you want a one-on-one with us, you guys had any other questions, let us know. We're more than happy to answer them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, thanks for coming out. I love you.
Thank you.